All right. It's about 4 after, so let's get started. We may have a few more people join us here, but let's get moving. I want to respect everyone's time and try to get you out on time. So thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Scott Robinson. I'm the project manager for the Near Southeast Area Plan, and this is a community workshop to look at draft recommendations for the plan. A few housekeeping items before we get started. We will have an opportunity for people to speak, but that'll be towards the end of the meeting. So until we get to that, if we could ask everyone to keep themselves on mute, that'll help the meeting move smoothly and let us get to the part where we can have a discussion. If you do have any issues or questions, you can use the chat or the Q&A function. If you have any technical issues, we'll try to help you out using that. And if you need Spanish interpretation, we do have Spanish interpretation. I'd like to introduce Sam, who's our interpreter, and who will give instructions in Spanish here. I think maybe he's already in the Spanish channel. Just 1 second. All right. Sam, are you back with us here?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, you were in the Spanish channel. So if you could give the instructions.
Yes, no problem. Entonces sí, solo para recordarles a todos que por favor se mantengan en mute hasta que lleguemos a la parte de preguntas y respuestas para que todo vaya más rápido. También mi nombre es Samuel, soy el intérprete que va a estar disponible si quieren participar y hacer preguntas en español.
Great, thank you. All right, now I'll turn it back on. So if anyone needs it, go ahead and go to the Spanish channel. All right, and now I'd like to hand it over to Councilman Cashman to say a few words.
Con el concejal que nos va a dirigir un poco unas cuantas palabras.
Sam, I'm getting the, well, maybe that's me, but I'm getting the Spanish feedback here.
Well, it sounds like that's cleared up. Good evening. My name is Paul Cashman. I've had the pleasure of representing
Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es Paul Cashman.
South Denver District 6 for the past 7 years.
Distrito 6.
Want to welcome everybody to the public meeting for the updates on the Near Southeast Area Planning Initiative. I want to especially thank the steering committee that's been working on this project for the better part of the past year.
Que está trabajando en esto durante un año.
Want to thank our community members for joining in to lend their voices, and also thank Scott and the other staff members from the Office of Community Planning and Development. This neighborhood planning initiative project is probably the most important planning structure to guide our individual neighborhoods as development occurs within their boundaries in the coming years. So please tell your neighbors to join in as we move along. And once again, thanks to you all for your participation. Scott, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. All right, I think we got the issue with the Spanish interpretation sorted out.
Sorry, Scott, can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I'm actually right now on the Spanish side. So only people that are on the Spanish side should be able to hear me right now. You should be able to be on the English side without being able to hear me. I don't know if maybe everyone's on the Spanish side and that's the problem.
Yeah, I'm on the English channel and I can hear you. So I don't know.
Same here. I'm on English.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can still hear you.
That's weird. As soon as I click on Spanish, it should mute on the English side. Or else I'm just going to be speaking over whoever's speaking.
Right. Maybe let me turn it off and turn it back on again and then rejoin.
Okay.
All right. Sorry about this, everyone. All right, I restarted the interpretation. If you're speaking, Sam, then I can't hear you, which I think is good.
Yes.
Now, wait, all right. Sam, say something.
Hello?
All right, now I'm hearing you again.
Okay, yeah, so now I'm on the English side. And
Okay.
then, and as soon as I switch right now, you should not be able to hear me anymore.
Okay, go ahead and switch. Okay. Are you on the Spanish side now? Okay, I'm getting some thumbs up. All right, great. Sorry about that, everyone. But wanted to make sure we got that working right. And now let's move on. So brief overview of what we're going to be doing tonight after the welcome. Give a quick overview of what the Near Southeast Area Plan is. For those of you who haven't been participating so far, or even if you have, if you've forgotten and need a reminder, it's been a few months since we've had one of these meetings. Then give an update of what we've done so far. As Councilman Cashman said, we've been working on this for about a year already. And then talk about what is next, what's upcoming, what the upcoming round of community engagement entails. Then we'll do some poll questions with the whole group here. Where you have an opportunity to provide some feedback on some opportunities and options. And then we're going to do breakout sessions by neighborhood. So we'll divide you up based on which neighborhood you're from. And that way we'll be able to have some more in-depth conversations with some smaller groups. So with that, let's get started with what is the Near Southeast Area Plan. It is a plan for a portion of Southeast Denver that includes the neighborhoods of Washington, Virginia Vale, Virginia Village, Indian Creek, Goldsmith, and University Hills north of Yale Avenue. So that's roughly Alameda on the north to Yale on the south, and Colorado on the west to Quebec and the city boundary on the east. The purpose of the plan is to identify the community's vision for this part of town, how it should grow and change over the next 20 years or so, and then lay out strategies for achieving that vision. The plan is a policy document, so it doesn't change any laws. It doesn't itself change zoning or allocate any budget, but it says these are the ways that the things that we should do, the things that we could do to achieve the community's vision. Neighborhood and small area plans like this take direction from our citywide plans, like our Comprehensive Plan 2040, Blueprint Denver, the Parks Game Plan for a Healthy City, and apply those recommendations to this area and look at how those different topics interact and interrelate to create specific recommendations for the area. So the plan covers a wide range of topics, including land use and built form, how things are developed, what they look like, what uses are allowed, housing and affordability, economy, business, jobs, mobility, how you move around the area, and what we call quality of life infrastructure, which includes things like parks and recreation, trails, green infrastructure, landscaping, safety, access to healthcare, access to food, things like that. The plan will also include individual recommendations for each neighborhood. So there will be area-wide recommendations for the entire area, and then each neighborhood will have its own section with its own unique recommendations as well. The plan process should take about 2 years. So we are about halfway through the process here in phase 3. The first phase, which we started last July, we call understanding the area, and it was really hearing from the community what they like and don't like and what they want the area to be like in the future, identifying the major issues the plan should address. Phase two, we really got into those issues and asked the community how we should be addressing those issues in the plan. We've now taken that feedback and used that to create draft recommendations, which we're sharing with you now as part of phase three. We want to get your input on those, improve those recommendations before they go into the draft plan, which we'll put together later this year. And then again, get community feedback on that and make improvements to it before it goes through the adoption process next year, if things stay on schedule. All right, to break things up a little bit and get things moving, let's do a quick icebreaker poll. So we're going to be using the Zoom polling function here. Let's try this out. So we're going to ask which foods, which tastes remind you of summer the most. So you got a few options here: ice cream, watermelon, sweet corn, barbecue, hamburgers and hot dogs, or something else. So if you just click on which one you like and hit submit. And then once we get the responses in here, we'll share the poll. Oh yeah, and while we're doing that, Councilman Cashman made a good point that we should also thank and acknowledge Councilwoman Black and Sawyer, who couldn't be here tonight, but they also represent parts of the near Southeast area. And they've been a big part of the plan so far and will continue to be. So really appreciate all their input and help, and their staff members as well. All right, if anyone's having trouble with the poll, go ahead and put something in the chat and we should be able to help you out. But it looks like we've got most of the responses here. So let me share the results. Looks like watermelon's the favorite, followed by ice cream, and then sweet corn and hamburgers and hot dogs tied for third there. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Just a little fun to start off. Moving along. So what we've done so far with the plan, those first two phases that I talked briefly about. Phase one, as I said, was understanding the area, asking how the community views the area, what they like and dislike, what you all would like the area to be like in the future, identifying the major issues. We launched that last July with community engagement that ran into September of last year with a community kickoff meeting similar to this one, an online survey, some events out in the community where we can meet people outdoors, focused engagement where we are intentionally engaging folks that we know typically don't participate in plans like this, or we know from tracking who we are hearing from that we're not hearing certain segments of the community in near Southeast. So focusing engagement on them. Also did some stakeholder interviews and attended some neighborhood meetings. We also did some existing conditions work to understand the baseline situation in near Southeast. So there's a lot of really interesting and great work in these. These are all available on the plan website if you want to check any of them out, providing some excellent background information on the plan. So we did a whole bunch of work and created what we call vision statements, which provide guidance for the plan recommendations. But we distilled that here down into just 4 bullet points of what we heard from the community in phase one. So there's a lot more to it than this, but these are the very high level highlights. The community would like improvements to the commercial corridors in near Southeast, especially Evans Avenue, wanting improved design, better walkability, more shopping, dining, and entertainment options. Want better and safer ways to move around the community for all modes, more diverse and more affordable housing options in near Southeast. And near Southeast has a lot of really great parks. So we want to preserve those parks and improve those and the trails and green spaces and landscaping in the area. So we took that information, the opportunities and issues we identified in phase one into phase two, asked folks to confirm the vision statements that we put together and start to develop those recommendations. So asking for these issues, how should we address these in the plan? Started to develop alternatives, which we'll get into later in this meeting. Started to get into some specific projects and focus areas to provide more detailed guidance for areas that need additional recommendations like Evans Avenue, and start to get into the neighborhood specific issues. As I mentioned, each neighborhood will have its own section of the plan, so we want to get into those as well. And then during that, be clear about how we are using the input from the first phase in phase two, and how we'll use the input from phase two going forward. So we had an online survey that we launched in February, 2 community workshops, virtual community workshops similar to this one that we did in March. Also did a series of pop-up and in-person events around the community, focus groups with subject matter experts and stakeholders to dive into some of the more technical issues, continued our focused engagement, and also launched our community Navigators program, where we're working with a few community members over the course of the project to serve as liaisons and help us make connections with segments of the community. So again, got a lot of great feedback through that. It's all available on the website if you want to get into the details, but distilling it down into a few key takeaways. Growth should be directed to appropriate areas and be accompanied by improved design, better mobility options, and more community amenities. Housing options that should be added in neighborhoods need to be appropriately scaled so they fit in, and make sure that we have the right infrastructure to support them and that they are making things more affordable. In terms of affordable housing, we want to be particularly serving families and those looking to buy, and providing services for people experiencing homelessness, and making sure we're connecting them to housing options, opportunities, and treatment services. For businesses, a desire for more restaurants and local shops and entertainment options, and supporting those through local business associations and other programs. Moving people around safely with improvements at key intersections and along major corridors, improving the walking and biking networks so that they are safer and more comfortable to use, improved landscaping in public and private developments that's more sustainable and resilient and provides habitat for wildlife and pollinators, and reducing water and energy use, reducing local heating, improving air quality, and doing all that through a combination of actions between the city and private property owners. So again, that was a very quick take on what we heard, but all of the feedback we used went into developing the draft recommendations, which are now up on the website. I'll show you a link in a minute, but we have a whole bunch of recommendations that we've put together over the last couple of months. And that's what we're sharing now. And so we want to get feedback on those so we can refine and improve those. I talked about, or I mentioned the alternatives that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but we want to, those are looking at a few different ways that we could grow or direct growth in the area. And so we want to get feedback on those so that we can choose the right one, which will be a combination of the options that we're sharing. Start to vet some of the specific projects that we're recommending. So specific improvements to things like streets or parks, get those in front of the community to make sure that they make sense. Update some of the maps that will go into the plan. And then again, being clear about how we use the input from the previous phase and how we will be using the input from this phase going forward. So similar to the first two phases, variety of activities, online surveys, as I mentioned, are up, community workshops, office hours, and I'll touch on these a little bit more in the coming slides. So the online surveys went up this afternoon. So they're available right now. You can go take those as soon as this meeting is over. We have 2 community workshops, the virtual one tonight that you're all attending. Thank you for joining us. And then we have another one in person next week, Thursday, the 21st at 5 p.m. at 4 Mile House. It will be a similar format to this one, but there will be some differences. So if you'd like to attend both, that would be great. We'd love to see you in person next Thursday. And then we will be doing office hours in later this month and into August. Because we've released a whole bunch of these draft recommendations, we understand folks may want to get into the details and have an opportunity to sit down with a planner and talk through them, have their questions answered. So that's what we're providing with the office hours. Those dates and times and locations will be up on the website shortly. You can show up and talk with a planner, have your questions answered, provide feedback, that sort of thing. We're also continuing the focused engagement and community navigators. So again, reaching groups that don't typically participate and that we know we haven't heard from earlier in the process, and then using those community navigators to build those relationships and serve as liaisons between the planning team and those segments of the community. The surveys are similar to the last round, divided into 4. So there are 4 surveys, one for each of the main topics: land use and built form, economy and housing, mobility, quality of life, infrastructure. You can take any or all of them, and they will be up for at least 6 to 8 weeks. So you have time because there's a lot in them. So it won't be easy to go through all of them quickly. So you can take your time, do them at your own pace. They cover all of the draft recommendations we've put together at this point. That doesn't mean more won't be added based on what we hear in the coming weeks. But for now, it represents everything we've put together. And some of them are more detailed, that we have more opportunity to get into the details on. Others are summarized at a higher level and will be fleshed out later as we get to the draft plan document. So as you read through them, you'll see some have more detail than others, but please provide feedback on all of them. So as I mentioned, the surveys are available on the plan website right now, denvergov.org/near-southeast-plan. You may have to scroll down just a bit, but they're there near the top of the page, right under the links to these workshops, and they will be up there at least through the end of August. So this phase, as I said, will run at least through the end of August, probably into September some, but we'll see how things go here. And then we will take all the feedback we get, make improvements to the draft recommendations, continue to detail the ones that need more detail, add things that need to be added, put those all into a draft plan document that we will share back with the community later this year. Give you all an opportunity to review that, make recommendations, improve that document before we go into the adoption process with hopefully the final version of the plan that will go through planning board and city council in the first half of next year, if we stay on schedule. All right, so that was a lot of me talking at you, but now's an opportunity for you to provide some feedback to us, although it will take a few minutes here for me to get through everything before we can get to the first poll question. But I mentioned the alternatives or opportunities, as we're calling them, and these are things where we've put together a few different options or ways that things could happen, and we want to get your feedback on them. The first one is about sort of generally how we're directing growth or development in near Southeast. And then we'll talk about how to incorporate what we call missing middle housing, which is housing in between single family house and a large apartment building. So things like duplexes, townhouses, garden courts, things like that. And then the last one will be about the industrial area east of Quebec, south of Cherry Creek. So we'll talk about each of those in turn. I'm going to present the 3 opportunities for each of these, and then we'll put up the poll and get your feedback on them. And then there will be an opportunity with the poll for you to type in why you chose the one you did, or any other feedback you'd like to provide. So starting with the development opportunities around where we should be directing growth, we want to make sure that that growth is paired with community benefits such as affordable housing, open space, improved landscaping, uses that actually serve the community that people will visit on a daily basis, and improve sustainability. We also want improved design so that it fits into the area and provides appropriate transitions into the residential areas. And also make sure that we're addressing mobility issues, that as we grow, we're not just making mobility worse, but we're actually providing additional mobility options to make it easier to get around the area. So there are, if you go into the survey and look at the draft recommendations, there are recommendations that address all of these. So when we start talking about the development opportunities, you can assume that in this future of the plan, these issues have been addressed, and we're getting the sort of ideal scenario here of development in near Southeast. So the first one, first opportunity is continuing to sort of concentrate growth around Colorado Station. It's our one regional center in the area, which means it's the area with the most growth potential. So it would capitalize on the existing infrastructure there, the transit station and the other mobility connections, and really be able to turn that into a complete mixed-use center. But it would also sort of limit opportunities elsewhere because we're directing so much of the investment in that area. Other parts of near Southeast would see less investment and fewer of those desired benefits that go along with it. So again, looking at the area around Colorado Station, they're at I-25 in Colorado and Evans, capitalizing on those transportation facilities and providing an opportunity for additional uses and development there. And then I'm going to show a few graphics here of how things could develop under this scenario. So this is basically what things look like today, looking east from Colorado Boulevard. So the existing Colorado Center development on the left, and the RTD parking ride and the public storage and freeway forward there on the right. And so looking at it in multiple phases. So the first phase would be putting the RTD parking in a structure of some kind, which would allow for redevelopment of that RTD parking lot. And then going even further into the future, sort of full build out scenario where the other properties there north of Evans redevelop into, again, creating this full mixed use center around Colorado Station. Opportunity 2 is spreading the growth more throughout the area along the corridors like Colorado, Evans, and Leetsdale, with some concentrations at some of the key intersections. So that would spread growth and benefits and amenities throughout the area more broadly. But because it's less concentrated, there's less opportunity at any given place. So any place would have fewer of these amenities than you would see if you concentrated them all at Colorado Station. So again, looking at how the growth could be distributed along the corridors, picking out a few intersections where it's concentrated a little more, but it is sort of spread across near Southeast, so more people would have access to these higher amenity areas. And again, looking at potential development, this is Evans Avenue, now looking north, just east of I-25, so between Dahlia Street and Grape Street, with Evans Avenue running left to right there in the middle. So again, this is existing conditions, what is there today. And then the first phase would be adding some additional connections to the street network and starting to redevelop the properties along Evans Avenue, getting more public plazas and more mixed use development, providing affordable housing and community serving uses. And then the sort of full build out again, further developing that street network to improve the connections, improve walkability, bikeability, and providing opportunities to move through the area easily. And then also building out those community benefits, more opportunities for the things that the community has told us they want. And then the third opportunity is sort of in between those two. So picking out a few centers to direct most of the growth to. So it would be sort of splitting the difference where it is more spread out than option one, but not as spread out as option two. So you get some more accessibility to those by spreading them around the area, but each one again is less of an opportunity than if it was all concentrated in one location. So here's a few of the centers that could see additional growth under this scenario. So we're looking at, again, Colorado Center, Quebec and Leedsdale, Evans and Monaco, the Yale station down there at I-25 in Yale, and also the local center there at Holly and Florida. So looking at how that Holly and Florida center could develop, again, now looking north along Holly Street at the intersection there of Holly and Florida. This is existing conditions. So the first phase of development could see some redevelopment, bringing property or buildings closer to the street, moving parking behind those to create that more pedestrian-friendly environment. And then with some shared parking and other opportunities, adding more development to the parking lot of the larger development there. And again, providing more opportunities for affordable housing, more shops serving the community, some public gathering space, things like that. All right, so those were the three opportunities. I will now open up the poll. And again, you can provide the vote for which one you think is most appropriate or you would most like to see pursued. And then you can provide additional feedback there below with why you chose what you did or any other feedback you want to include, suggestions for improvement, anything like that. So take a few minutes on that one. And then keep in mind that what ultimately goes into the draft plan will be some combination of these. You may have noticed that these are not necessarily mutually exclusive. So we'll take what people like or dislike about each of these and use those to craft the actual recommendations in the plan. Looks like not everybody's responded yet, so let's give it another minute. And I can take a minute to type in your thoughts there. So I want to make sure we give people enough time to do that.
Hi, Scott. Is there a way to get the poll back? The first one popped up for me, but this one didn't pop up. Is there
Huh.
someplace I can go where I can open it back up if I closed it by accident?
Good question. Yeah, it should pop up for you. I don't know.
Yeah, the first one popped up
If
right
you're
in
able
front of
to,
me.
at the bottom of the screen, there's a poll right next to the chat and participants.
I do not have that, so I'm gonna rejoin.
Okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
All right, if you're still typing in your response, if you could try to wrap that up here pretty quick so we can move on. We do still have a fair amount more that we want to get through tonight's meeting. So just a few more seconds here to wrap up your thoughts and get that submitted. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close it. All right, so it looks like opportunity 2 was the most popular here. People liked spreading it more along the corridors. So that's great. Look forward to seeing what people typed in there as well when we get a chance to review those. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. So let's move on to the next one. So this is the missing middle housing opportunity. So again, this is looking at how we can add more housing options into existing neighborhoods that are a little higher density, but will fit in these neighborhoods. So again, that's things like duplexes, triplexes, townhouses and row houses, and small apartment buildings up to about 20 units, things like garden courts. So when we asked about this in the last round, what we heard from the community was that we want to make sure that they are compatible and fit in with the existing neighborhoods in terms of design, that they don't stick out, that they're not too big or otherwise inappropriate. Making sure that we have the mobility and other infrastructure in place that can support them so that these added people can move around safely and conveniently and can be supported by the water and energy needs and things like that. And then making sure that we're promoting affordability. We don't want to be adding new housing that's just really expensive and out of reach. We want to be, the purpose of this is to create opportunities for more affordability. So again, there are recommendations that address all of these in the draft recommendations in the surveys. So take a look at those. But for now, sort of assume that these will all be in place as we go into these missing middle options. So the first one, you'll notice the numbers keep going up. So we're starting with opportunity 4 here. That just sort of helps us keep track of things. So opportunity 4 is duplexes allowed in all residential areas. So everywhere that's a single unit residential now would be allowed to have duplexes. So individual properties could come in and rezone to allow a duplex. This would provide a lot of opportunities across the area. And again, these duplexes would be of similar character to what's built there now. So you wouldn't really even notice the change from a design perspective. But it limits the opportunity for some of the larger types of housing that could accommodate more people and make a bigger impact. So here, highlighting generally where the single unit residential areas are in near southeast, or what we call the residential low areas, to use the language of Blueprint Denver. And so these are the areas that would then be allowed to have duplexes under this opportunity. And here's some photos of what duplexes like this could look like. So again, things that are of similar scale to what is built there now. We're not talking about huge, overwhelming developments, but things of a similar scale to the existing neighborhood. The next opportunity is looking around the edges of these residential neighborhoods. and serving as a transition from the mixed use centers and corridors, putting in some of the larger options like small apartment buildings or townhouses to function as a transition or a buffer. So it creates opportunities for some of these larger missing middle housing options and creates that buffer, but it also sort of geographically limits where these opportunities can take place with these just on the edges. So there's fewer places where they could go. So here you can see sort of those squiggly lines identifying some of the places where these buffers could or transitions could take place, providing opportunities for, again, garden court apartments, townhomes, things like that, to serve as that transition. So here we have sort of showing how that transition could occur. On the left, you see development along the center or corridor, multi-story sort of mixed-use development. And on the right, you see a single unit residential neighborhood. And that transition zone is that buffer, allowing those missing middle options to sort of fit in between. So here you see some townhomes and small apartment buildings. And then the third opportunity here, what we call missing middle opportunity 6, is looking at some of the larger streets, the collectors and arterials that run through these residential neighborhoods, and allowing properties that front those streets to add things like triplexes or townhomes, 4 to 6 units. That would, again, provide a spread of opportunities throughout the area, but again, with some geographic limitations to being on these larger streets. So here you can see just picking out some of those larger streets that could be considered, like Dahlia, Holly, Monaco, Florida, and again, potentially putting in some of these slightly larger units along those corridors. And here you can see some photos of what those could look like. So again, we're not talking about large apartment buildings, things that have a residential character and will fit into the neighborhood, but also provide more housing options for the area. So those are the 3 opportunities there. Moving on to the poll. So same sort of thing here. Pick which one you think makes the most sense, what you would most like to see. Ultimately, what gets recommended could be some combination of these. And then eventually there will be a citywide program to look at how to integrate missing middle housing into residential neighborhoods across the city. But this provides us an opportunity to make some recommendations about how that can happen until that citywide solution comes along. So providing opportunities for the neighborhoods in the shorter term. And then again, give us your thoughts in the open-ended question below, why you chose what you chose, or any other thoughts, suggestions, things we should be thinking about, anything like that can go in that second question.
Scott, I'm just seeing the options, but not the poll itself.
Really? I don't know. And you don't have a poll option down at the bottom?
No, I do not. Wait, got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great. And then to answer your question that you put in the chat, Councilman, with changes to the zoning, we can reduce the bulk plan, we can reduce heights. So if we get those changes in place first before we start allowing these additional options, then yeah, we can reduce the size of these buildings so that they will fit in. Because yeah, we don't want to see what has happened in other parts of the city where We open up options, but what is allowed is completely out of scale with what exists there now. And we see really wholesale change to these neighborhoods. That's not what we want to happen in this area. We know that's not what the community would like to see. So we want to make sure that we get the design issues figured out. We'll talk about those design issues a little later in the breakout sessions. And get those solutions in place so that we can add additional housing options without really changing the look and feel of the neighborhood.
And just wanted to note that Councilwoman Sawyer has joined us as well.
Yes, see that. Great. Thank you for joining us, Councilwoman.
Thanks for having me. Apologies for being late.
That's all right. All right, looks like we're getting good feedback on this one, so I'll give it just another minute or so here for people to finish typing up their responses. All right, I'm gonna close it here in just a few seconds, so finish your thought if you're still typing. Okay. So it looks like opportunity 5 is the most popular there, the transition from the centers and corridors into the neighborhoods. But some support for the other ones. So thanks everyone for your responses on those. And again, looking forward to seeing what folks put into the comments there. All right, one more set of opportunities. And this one is looking at the industrial area east of Quebec, south of Cherry Creek. So it has the waste transfer station there at the north end. The Denver Dumb Friends League is at sort of the south end along Quebec. So you can picture that in your mind. When we asked about this area in the last round of engagement, we heard that there was some interest in allowing additional uses in the area, potentially housing or retail. Also a desire to improve the design of industrial development in the area. And making sure it's compatible with surrounding uses, but also wanting to maintain the businesses and the jobs in near Southeast. So not necessarily seeing all of those go away. So the first one here, again, opportunity 7, just continuing to count, would be changing the designation of the area from what it currently is, which is value manufacturing, which is really an industrial manufacturing focused designation, to what we call innovation flex, which allows a broader range of uses, including housing and retail and things like that. So it would open up the allowed uses, which would provide those opportunities, but also potentially result in loss of some of those jobs or businesses in the area if the area redevelops. So here you can see the area that we were talking about there in the sort of bottom right, that light purple, changing that over to innovation flex. Heights could be somewhere in the 5 to 7 story range under this scenario, again, allowing a broad range of uses. And the innovation flex, again, provides more flexibility in design and uses. A lot of it is what we call IMX zoning, which is, you can think a lot of Rhino has that type of zoning and is innovation flex. So that's can give you an idea of what it could potentially look like. Opportunity 2 would be keeping some of it as value manufacturing, but allowing some of it to evolve into that innovation flex, potentially serving as a sort of transition. There's residential just to the south of this area in Arapahoe County, And then again, the waste transfer station at the north end. So using that innovation flex as sort of a buffer between the residential and the heavier industrial uses. So it keeps some of that employment opportunity while also allowing some additional uses, but sort of limits the scope for either of those since they'll have a limited area. So again, here's the map. You can see that innovation flex may be lower, around 3 stories to the south, and then keeping the value manufacturing, the heavier industrial to the north in the area. And then the last option here would be to keep it value manufacturing for the most part, but introduce a local center, so a small sort of mixed use area, potentially along the creek to serve people using the creek and the nearby residential and the people who work in the area. So it preserves more of the employment opportunities in the value manufacturing while also providing an opportunity for community serving uses, a coffee shop, maybe a little bit of housing. But it would be a fairly small area, so it would be a fairly limited opportunity for any of that. So again, here is the area looking at maybe at that sort of southeast corner adjacent to the creek, allowing some mixed use there while preserving the rest of it as value manufacturing. So those are the 3 options again. Now, same poll as before. Tell us which one you like, which one you're most interested in, you think makes the most sense, and then tell us why you chose that one or any other feedback you have. And I see a note here in the chat. Somebody was having issues, but they updated their Zoom app and are now able to get to the poll. So that may be a problem if you're using an old version of Zoom. This is the last of these polls we'll be doing though. So if you get it figured out for this one, that'd be great. But if you don't, then don't worry about it. We'll be going into the breakout rooms after this. All right, and let's give it just another minute here for people to finish getting their responses in. All right. Close it here in just a few seconds. So finish typing whatever you're typing, and we're going to close it here. All right. So this one, fairly even. Opportunities 7 and 9 had the same number of votes, and then 8, just a couple behind. So fairly even split there. So again, we'll take this feedback from this and the rest of the engagement and come up with something that balances what people like about these different options as much as we can. All right. So that's it for the polling. Thanks everyone for putting up with that. Hopefully it was a little interesting. And now we're going to go into the breakouts. So we've got about half an hour left to talk about these. So we'll send you to your rooms in just a minute, but we've got sort of 4 recommendations that we want to discuss in these breakout groups. One looking at residential design and preservation, one looking at introducing new affordable housing and what that should look like, one looking at improving transit service and access, and then one looking at the amenities that we'd like to see in the parks. So we will share each of these recommendations, and then what we'd like to hear from you is really any thoughts you have on them. But think about, do you agree or disagree with what the recommendation is saying? Do you think there's anything missing? Again, keeping in mind that this is a small portion of a much broader set of recommendations, but anything you think of that should be covered that you're not seeing there, let us know. And then any suggestions for improving the recommendation, how we can make those better. So that's what you should be thinking about. And we want to hear from you in these breakout rooms. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms. Some of you have been pre-assigned based on your responses in the registration for the Zoom. So you'll automatically be sent to the neighborhood room. If you're not, put in the chat what neighborhood you would like to go to, and we will move you into that room. Again, about half an hour here, and then we'll come back for a brief recap. So stick around until the end. And if you're not sure what neighborhood you live in, we have the map there. So take a look at that and figure out which neighborhood you want to go to. All right, so I'm going to open up the breakouts here. All right, so yeah, if you haven't been sent to a room, put what neighborhood you want to go to in the chat, and we will get you into that room.
Hello.
All right. Hello, everybody. If there's anybody who got sent to this room and doesn't want to be in the Washington, Virginia Vale neighborhood discussion, let me know and I can reassign you to another room. And we'll just wait a few minutes here for other folks to get assigned. All right, looks like we're getting close on these. So give it just another minute here while we make the final assignments. All right, I think we've got most everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. Kristen, you'll see, is also with CPD. She's going to be taking notes on this. So, and she can help you out if you have any technical issues as well. So let me get the presentation back up. All right. So we're going to have sort of open discussion here. Just wanted to set some ground rules so that we're all having a fruitful discussion. We want to hear what you have to say and what you think, but we only have a limited amount of time. So as much as possible, try to be concise in what you say and make sure that you're not dominating the conversation. Let other people who haven't spoken speak before you speak again. If you're agreeing with someone, that's great, but don't have to repeat what they say. You can just say, I agree with what they said. If you're disagreeing, also great. We want to hear different opinions. But focus on the idea of what they're saying instead of attacking the person. When you want to speak, it's great if you can use the raise hand function. It's not a large group, so we shouldn't have too much trouble, but that just helps keep things a little organized. And then it looks like most of you do have your video on, so that's great. Really appreciate that. All right, so we're going to go into the residential design recommendations here. So again, keep in mind, do you agree or disagree with the recommendation? Anything missing? Any suggestions for improvement? So we asked about this in the last round of engagement. We asked what elements folks thought were most important for residential design, and a lot of them had to do with sort of the size or appearance of the houses. So the height or the number of stories, how close they were to the street or their neighbors, how much yard space there was, things like that. And then also wanted, the community wanted to recognize the differences between neighborhoods. So that's part of why we wanted to talk about this tonight in these neighborhood breakouts, so we can understand what are the unique circumstances in Washington, Virginia Vale that we need to be addressing in the plan, or even between sub-neighborhoods in Washington, Virginia Vale that we need to address in the plan. So here's the draft recommendation. It'll go over a couple slides here, and I'm not going to read it all, but I'll try to summarize it, and you can read along as I go here. We want to improve the zoning tools in the area so that new construction and additions fit into the existing character. So we want better standards for the size of buildings, the massing scale, building placement, things like that, to improve the character. So some of the specifics we want to look at are the lot coverage, making sure that the buildings don't, or the houses don't cover too much of the property, and that they have appropriate setbacks from neighboring properties and the street. The height and what we call the bulk plane, which sort of limits how big the building can be and how big it appears, to make sure that that is consistent with existing development in the area. And looking at other tools to limit the appearance of the size, so things like roof pitch. A lot of areas in near Southeast have really low roof pitch or almost flat roofs. So being consistent in that as well. And then thinking about preservation, how we want to preserve some of the historic areas that people might want to. So there are some areas that were identified through the Discover Denver survey and through what we've heard from the community that have potential historic characters. So connecting neighborhoods to the appropriate tools to preserve that character where they would like to do that, and improving the design again, so that when things are built, they fit into that character, and providing other resources to encourage preservation, like technical assistance, incentives and grants, and using some of the research we've done here to help identify some of the areas. That near Southeast neighborhood pattern analysis is one of those existing conditions studies we did that's up on the website. So went through those really quick. But now I want to open it up for um, any comments you have. Again, agree or disagree, anything missing, anything that can be improved, or any questions you have, or any other thoughts.
I have one comment that I thought when you started this meeting that we're not dealing with any zoning changes, that this is just a plan to put in place, but we're not doing anything as far as zoning or changing any building codes or anything like that.
Yeah, so you're right, the plan itself won't change any zoning or any building codes like that. But the plan can make recommendations to change those things. And then those would happen through a follow-up process, what we call a regulatory process that would actually make those changes. So upon adoption of the plan, those things won't happen. They won't be implemented by the plan, but the plan can say, all right, we need to change the zoning standards in this area to limit height. And then following the adoption of the plan, we would start a process to actually implement that. So yeah, it's a little complicated. It's a good question. I should have been clearer about that, but hopefully that helps.
I have a question about the one of the polls was talking about commercials centers, and one of the local zones identified was like Holly in Florida.
Yep.
From a Washington, Virginia Vale perspective, our commercial kind of like local zone is like that plaza east of Monaco Plaza, which Monaco Plaza is very car centric. It's actually like nearly impossible as a pedestrian to feel safe walking into that plaza. I live 2 blocks away, but when I walk there, I'm like, oh no, I don't want to be walking here. But is there any consideration in how that could become a more a local zone that fits more in with the immediate neighborhood rather than just being like someplace people driving on Monaco make pit stops at, especially considering like there's the office buildings over there that have, I think the entire time I've lived here, have had for lease signs and have not been at capacity at all for the past several years.
Yeah, absolutely. The plan has recommendations about how to improve those types of developments. Right now, there's nothing specific about that Monaco Plaza, but as we further develop it, we could get some specific recommendations there. But there are definitely general recommendations about how we can see those types of older shopping centers evolve into more pedestrian-friendly things with more amenities for the community. So absolutely, take a look at the surveys and provide us your feedback on what's in there.
Can I ask a clarification question about, you had mentioned something about the preservation
Yeah.
zones. Can you show that slide again?
Yep.
Or,
You want-
I'm not entirely sure I understand what those are. Is that like wide? Is that something that affects a wide area or just like particular points in the region, in the neighborhood?
Yeah, they can be, so like a landmark district can be scaled to cover a large neighborhood or a small sub neighborhood, just one subdivision within a neighborhood. And then individual landmarkings affect just individual properties. So if somebody wanted to make sure their house was preserved, they could apply for an individual landmarking for that house, or a landmark district could cover a block, it could cover a subdivision, it could cover an entire neighborhood.
Okay. So you don't, there isn't a lot of specifics there. Are those coming later?
Yes, yeah, there will be more specifics added to this later, but that's what we want to hear from the community to help us. What are the specifics that you would like to see around this? Are there, specific areas that you would like to see preserved, where we should be definitely pursuing a landmark district? Are there specific character elements that you think are important that we should be working to preserve? Because there are other tools like a conservation overlay that can help achieve that. So yeah, what would you like to see in terms of more details on this recommendation?
I have a comment on that. It's one of my favorite things about this neighborhood is I live on the west side of Holly, and it feels like stepping into a time capsule. Every house, nearly every house in the neighborhood's original. They have the original date stamps from the construction company on the driveways. And just walking the neighborhood, it just feels like, you're walking through the set of the Wonder Years or something. It's, kids playing in the street, and all the houses are built in the 50s and early 60s. And any zoning, there are probably places that could use some change. That shopping center over by Monaco that I think Kenneth mentioned. But the character of the neighborhood, that old-fashioned character is just I think it's really special to this neighborhood.
Yeah, great. Thanks. All right. We've got 3 more that we want to go through. So any other thoughts on the residential design or preservation before we move on?
I'll just mention that I disagree with Ryan, but I won't be picky about it. I'll just say that I think we have a lot of townhomes on the east side, which wouldn't fit in with like the western half of the neighborhood, but I think there's concepts we can bring to the neighborhood that wouldn't clash with the old school 50s, 60s houses, but would fit in better than like the newer houses going up that are single family 3,000 square foot places.
Right.
So I think like we could fit single family row homes or whatnot into like along Holly or along Monaco more, without it really clashing too much with the existing houses.
Yeah, right. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. So let's move on to the affordable housing. So again, agree or disagree, anything missing, any suggestions for improvement? So we asked what types of affordable housing are most important to include in the area. Larger units and for sale units came out on top. Also, units for folks in particularly low incomes, 80%, 40% and below, things like that. 40 to 80% AMI is area median income. So that's sort of standard measure of affordability relative to the median income for the entire Denver metro area. So here's the draft recommendation for new affordable units. We want to make sure that we are providing units that fit in with the community, creating mixed income development that targets those things we were talking about. So very low and moderate incomes, permanent supportive housing for folks experiencing homelessness or transitioning out of homelessness or have other serious needs, and providing housing options, again, for families, for multi-generational living. Folks can age in place, or people who have other specific needs because of disabilities or other services needed. Making sure that we're getting it for long-term, and then making sure it's a quality that fits in with the neighborhood. So you won't even necessarily notice that it is affordable housing, viewing it from the outside. Yep, that's it for that one. So any thoughts on the affordable housing recommendations?
don't know if this is um, in here, but mixing the affordable housing with like mixed use, so on top of bars and restaurants and shops and that sort of thing.
Right, yep, that's a good idea. Council.
Thanks, Scott. I just have a question about, obviously we want to include housing affordability in, all of our neighborhoods. But I have a question about the disconnect between plan and implementation in something like this. So, I live pretty close to this area. I spend a lot of time over here. And when I'm reading these recommendations, what is coming to my head is where? How would something like this be, implemented in this area? Given some of the other recommendations that have kind of been talked through, and given the feedback that we've received via the surveys that, setbacks, larger setbacks are important, yard is important, all of those kinds of things. So it feels like, and maybe you can talk through this a little bit, it feels like there's a disconnect between some of these recommendations that just, they don't work together. And so I'm trying to, I guess, work through in my mind how. Could you maybe give some examples of not necessarily location, but form, I guess?
Yeah, a great question. And you're right, there is, this is a small portion of it. So maybe if you look at all of the draft recommendations, it'll make a little more sense. But you're also right that there is some tension between some of these recommendations, and there is, to some extent, they're in conflict. We're trying to accomplish two things that don't always go together. So it's a matter of balancing those things, right? So we want to add more housing and more affordable housing while also preserving the character, so that those things are somewhat opposed. So it's a matter of balancing those two, right? So there's sort of three ways maybe that we can think about adding affordable housing. One is sort of the classic model of the city purchases a property to partner with a developer to redevelop as an affordable housing or a mixed income development. So we could find properties maybe along Leetsdale that are underutilized, use our affordable housing funds to create an affordable housing or mixed income development there. The other is incorporating affordable housing into new developments. So obviously, as you know, our recently adopted expanding housing affordability now requires larger developments to incorporate affordable housing into those developments. So any new multi-unit or mixed-use development will have affordable housing in it. And so we want to provide guidance to make sure that we're getting the right kind of affordable housing through programs like that. And then the third one is thinking about like the missing middle opportunities and looking at programs to inject affordability into those new units that are built. And there's some recommendations elsewhere in the survey that talk about what types of programs those are. But there are things that we're recommending that will help making sure that, if we add a duplex or we add a townhouse, that we're getting some form of affordability with that. And it's not coming in at a much higher price point than the existing neighborhood or anything like that.
Okay, I absolutely understand that, but in the market, like the realities of the market, that's just not possible, because EHA is fantastic, but it is for units larger than, developments larger than 10 units.
Right.
And so sure, the properties along Leetsdale, which is a planned transit corridor where there's, where we should be focusing the density, all of those things along Monaco, that makes, along Quebec, that makes sense. But we're not going to get that affordability out of a duplex, right? Because of the cost of land and labor and lumber. So I guess while I understand that the plan recommendations are goals for the future, I think also it's important to take some of the market conditions into account. And I don't know if maybe the way that that sort of missing middle fills in is potentially ADUs on, or something like that instead. But that's not going to be capital A housing affordability. That is going to be that missing middle fill in. So I guess I'm sort of still feeling a disconnect between the kind of planning stage of a couple of different goals that we have and how in this area we would achieve that given some of the market conditions that exist.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's no simple answer. So we do have some recommendations that try to address that. So if you want to take a look at those, and then I'm happy to talk with you more about this at a future discussion, because I'd like to move along. But yeah, I'll follow up with you on that. Brad, you had your hand up. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just quickly. I agree with, it was going to be in the same lines what you guys just discussed. So I just say I'll agree with that. I was going to mention about location, where would these happen, and along the corridors would make the most sense. And if you're going to be doing affordable housing, how it would match into the neighborhood would be like next to the big apartment buildings on those major corridors along that line. So I just agree with that same discussion. I don't need to go any further. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Andrew, did you want to add something? So you unmuted.
Agreeing. I also, that last conversation was helpful. Thanks.
Great. All right, let's move on. We're running out of time here. Oh, Kenneth, did you have something you wanted to add?
I was just a quick comment in terms of like within the neighborhood, not just along corridors. I think reiterate that there's some nice townhomes within the neighborhood. Like up the street from me on Cremaria Street, there's a row of 6, 7, 8 of them. And I think those fit nicely in the neighborhood and they don't really detract from the character. So just volume of more available housing. And those are like 1,200 square feet, 1,600 square feet, maybe.
Right.
It's just that smaller housing in the form of a duplex or a townhome can fit in this neighborhood, in my opinion.
Okay. Great, thanks. All right, transit service, again, agree, disagree, anything missing, suggestions for improvement. We asked about sort of transit stop improvements, but we didn't really ask much about transit service improvements in the last round of engagement. So that's why we want to ask about it here. So a lot of this is about improving sort of getting to stops or making connections once you're at stops. So things like wayfinding and information at stops so that you know when the next bus is coming or what buses are showing up and where they go. Making it easier to get eco passes, so the RTD pass. Neighborhoods or small businesses can work with RTD to get passes for their residents or employees. So improving that. Looking at what we call micro mobility solutions. So things like on-demand transit services like shuttles or ride shares or e-bikes or things like that at transit stations so you can continue your journey. Again, providing information so you know once you're at a station what's nearby and how to get there effectively. So that was very quickly thinking about sort of transit access improvements. Any thoughts on that?
I'll just chime in that I agree with all of this, that we need a better transit system. But in general, the only thing I would add to this that wouldn't be in there, well, it's part of the plan, is to bring more of the jobs and the shops and the restaurants and everything closer so we don't have to use our car to go everywhere, which I know that's in there in the plan as well. That's not really mentioned in here, but in that way, we won't have to use as many roads and highways and streets to and stations and bus stops in order to accomplish that.
Yeah, great point. You're absolutely right. That's all interconnected. So improving the development form will help all this as well. All right, we are about out of time, so let me jump to the last one. Talking about parks amenities. So what types of amenities would we like to see added in parks? A lot of support for natural landscaping, open spaces, walking trails, things like that. So recommendations to, consistent with other city plans, add amenities like natural landscaping. We have the outdoor adventure master plan, which I think was just completed. So it addresses things like skate parks. So build on that to accomplish those. Prioritize amenities based on what the community most wants. We've heard a lot of comments about a dog park. Parks and Recreation has a process for that. So working with the community to sort of move through that process, identifying locations, identifying funding and maintenance and things like that. And then we also heard an idea about adding some sort of concert venue, a band shell or an amphitheater somewhere to a park in near Southeast. So continuing to explore that, finding potential funding and management and how that would impact the parks and surrounding neighborhoods. And so looking at that as a potential addition to a park in near Southeast. Any thoughts on any of those? Got a thumbs up from Brad. Anything else?
Thumbs
All right.
up on the dog park because everyone uses Garland Park as a dog park already. For the most part.
That's consistent with what we've been hearing. All right. So we're at 7:30. So we're going to go back to the main room. Thanks everybody for the comments. Really appreciate you taking the time and providing those. And hope you'll take the surveys and continue to be involved in the process. All right. So I'll see you all back in the main room.
Scott, you're muted. Nobody can hear you.
Sorry about that. Okay. So we're a little over time. So if you need to leave, go ahead and leave. But for folks who can stick around, I'd love to do a brief recap of what the different groups were talking about. And while we're doing that, if you would like to enter for a chance to win a gift card, I'm going to put a link in the chat. You can go there, put your email in, and you'll be entered into a drawing. So with that, why don't we start with Virginia Village? If somebody from Jason or who was the note taker there would like to go.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Scott, I'm happy to jump in. And I do want to apologize to the Virginia Village group. We did get cut off there, and that was my fault. I didn't see the timer click down. So I think I was mid-sentence when I got cut off, so I apologize that we abruptly came back to the room. So we did not get through every question. We did really kind of have universal agreement when it came to the draft recommendations for residential design in the area, and really making sure that that design is compatible with the existing neighborhood patterns in terms of height, size, and scale, and really kind of promoting and celebrating some of the architectural features that currently exist within the Virginia Village neighborhood. So that's something that really kind of rose to the forefront, and that in addition to also making sure that we are respectful to the existing housing and commercial stock in terms of transitioning and kind of what that looks like within the neighborhood. So generally speaking, folks were supportive. Again, we didn't get through everything tonight, and I do apologize to the Virginia Village group that we did not get to every recommendation, but thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jason. All right, and it looked like some of the other groups were combined, so I'm not sure who, but if some of the other facilitators could speak up.
Do Indian Creek. So one thing of note that came out of our group when talking about parks and ways of activating them, something that was brought up was having small events such as food trucks or things like that take place in the smaller parks. But one of the big barriers to making that happen is the permitting process and the insurance requirements for the group that's putting it on. So something that was recommended as an addition would be exploring streamlining that process to allow neighborhood groups support, or just an easier way of making those small events happen that will help activate the park and create community.
Great, thanks. And then Goldsmith and University Hills.
Yeah, I can talk for Goldsmith, and like Jason, I'm gonna apologize to our group. We were mid talking there and I didn't catch it as well. So sorry about that. We were trying to cram it in there at the end, but I think one thing of note is when we were talking about the transit pieces, making sure that it's attractive from walking and bicycling to those stations. While the amenities at the stations are great, but if the if it's hard to access the stations, people are going to drive to those stations, and it offsets the benefits of having transit in the area.
Great, thanks. Okay, so it looks like Virginia Village and U Hills were in one group. So that just leaves our group, Washington, Virginia Vale. One of the big things we talked about was around the affordability recommendations, how the tension between trying to increase affordability, especially with missing middle housing, versus the residential design recommendations, trying to make sure that they fit in and things like that. And so how can we make sure that we are improving affordability with the missing middle, and you know, we have programs for larger developments, but those smaller developments sort of fall through the cracks. So trying to make sure that we're being consistent in the recommendations and things work together. All right. Thanks everyone for joining and for sticking around a little past 7:30. I hope some of you will be able to make the in-person workshop next Thursday, 5 p.m., 4 Mile House. And also please take the surveys on the website now, denvergov.org/near-southeast-plan. Really appreciate everybody's thoughtful participation tonight. And I hope you will continue to be involved with the plan going forward. Everybody have a good evening, and thank you for your time.